The first lie I ever told her was that I didn't believe in love. The second was that I could survive a week pretending to be her husband without falling for her. That was the thought running through Daniel Hart's mind the night he met Evelyn Cross, the woman who looked like she had everything yet stood in front of him completely alone, clutching a check that could change his life forever. He never imagined 1 week could rewrite the scars of his past or hers, but life has a strange way of pushing two broken people toward the healing they never knew they needed. Daniel hadn't meant to eavesdrop. He was wiping down a table at the quiet café where he worked when the sound of someone trying not to cry pulled his attention. Evelyn Cross, the CEO whose face was printed on every magazine from Forbes to Fortune, sat alone in the corner, her shoulders trembling as she tried to hide behind a pair of expensive sunglasses. No one approached her, everyone was too intimidated, too careful, too distant. Everyone except Daniel. He carried a cup of chamomile tea to her table and set it down gently. She didn't look up at first. But when she did, her eyes, a soft storm gray usually seen only in winter skies, were filled with exhaustion he recognized too well. The exhaustion of someone who had spent years pretending to be okay. She asked him why he brought her tea she didn't order. He told her she looked like she needed it, and that was how it began. The strange, fragile moment that would change both their lives. Evelyn had come to the cafe that night because her world had cracked open in ways money couldn't fix. Her board questioned her decisions, tabloids attacked her character, and a family wedding loomed ahead, one she couldn't attend alone, not with the whispers that she was too powerful, too cold, too unloved. She needed someone by her side. Not a real partner. Just someone who could stand next to her for 1 week and silence the vultures. When she offered him $10,000 to pretend to be her husband for 7 days, Daniel almost laughed. Not because it was ridiculous, but because it felt like fate was playing a cruel joke. $10,000 could pay off the medical debt his late mother left behind. It could fix everything, except the one thing money couldn't touch, the quiet ache of loneliness he lived with every day. He should have said no, he should have walked away. But her voice cracked when she asked again. Not like a CEO making a deal. Like a woman begging for one last chance to hold her world together. So he said yes, and that was the moment Evelyn Cross unknowingly hired a man who would break down every wall she spent a lifetime building, while trying desperately not to lose himself along the way. The drive to the countryside estate where her family waited was filled with silence. Evelyn sat with perfect posture, chin lifted, wearing the kind of confidence people spent years envying. But Daniel could see through it now. Every time she thought he wasn't looking, her fingers trembled in her lap. Every mile they drove, she seemed to shrink further into herself, as if returning home meant returning to every wound she'd ever been given. He didn't ask questions, but she offered pieces of her truth anyway, small pieces, the kind given only when someone is barely holding on. She told him her father doubted every accomplishment she had, believing she only succeeded because she was ruthless. She told him her mother thought she pushed people away on purpose. She told him her ex-fiancé left her 3 days before their wedding, saying she didn't know how to love. Every confession landed like a stone in Daniel's chest. He wanted to tell her she wasn't cold, she was hurting. He wanted to tell her she didn't push people away, they simply never stayed long enough to understand her. But he kept quiet. He was just the man she hired. Not the man allowed to save her. When they arrived, Evelyn slipped her hand into his, pretending like it was the most natural thing in the world. But Daniel felt the truth in her touch. It wasn't natural. It was necessary. She needed someone. She needed him. The family dinner was a battlefield dressed as a celebration. Her cousins whispered. Her aunts stared. Her father analyzed Daniel like he was a number on a spreadsheet. And through it all, Evelyn held Daniel's hand a little too tightly, as though he were the only anchor she had left. When her father implied she paid Daniel to be there, right to her face, Daniel saw the pain flash through her eyes. So he did the one thing he hadn't expected of himself. He defended her. Fiercely. Honestly. Like she deserved. He spoke about her strength, her kindness, the way she inspired people without trying. He told them she didn't build her empire by being cold, she built it by surviving things most people would crumble under. He told them she didn't need him. He needed her. Evelyn stared at him like she was seeing a sunrise for the first time. Later that night, alone on the balcony, she asked him why he said those things. He said it was the truth. She said no one ever defended her like that. He told her maybe no one ever looked closely enough to see who she really was. Her breath caught. The wind shifted. And for a moment, they stood too close, hearts beating in rhythms that weren't part of the contract. But Daniel stepped back first. He reminded himself of the lie. He didn't believe in love. He reminded himself of the deal. 7 days. He reminded himself of the fact she wasn't his. The week unfolded with moments that blurred the line between pretend and real. They shared late-night talks she never expected to have. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. She touched his hand without thinking. He looked at her like she wasn't a CEO or a headline or a broken story waiting to be judged. He looked at her like she mattered, and that terrified her. On the final night, when their marriage was supposed to end, the truth neither of them planned for surfaced, quiet, undeniable, and terrifying. She told him she didn't want the week to be over. He told her he wished he had more time with her. She whispered that he made her feel seen. He whispered that she made him believe in love again, but love was complicated, and life was messy, and the world wasn't ready for a CEO to fall for a cafe worker. The moment was too fragile to hold, and she was too scared to let herself want something real. They both stepped away, choosing safety over heartbreak, until the next morning, when she showed up at his small apartment, rain-soaked and breathless, holding the check he never cashed. She told him she didn't want to buy a week of his time anymore. She wanted a lifetime of his truth, and Daniel, tired of lying to himself, finally told her the words he'd buried beneath all his fear: "I wasn't pretending. Not for a single moment." She broke down crying. He held her like he'd been waiting his entire life to do so. And for the first time in years, two people who had been shattered in different ways found something neither believed they would ever have again: a chance, a beginning, a love that healed instead of hurt.